Back at it again with another lore compilation. Of course, before we move forward, I always like to give y'all an update. Got a lot of positive feedback from the previous video. I am very glad that pretty much everyone liked it. I'm definitely going to continue with content in that style. I really like digging into the media I really care about like that, and hopefully, should life not throw a million obstacles at me, I'll have a new one for y'all in 2 weeks. Also, I'm trying to get back to streaming for y'all. I was really consistent for a little bit, and now stuff has been popping up that prevents me from doing it when I'd like. I'm not at the point yet where I can 100% commit to a stream schedule. It's definitely something I'm working towards, though. But anyway, this compilation is going to cover all the videos I posted from March 1st to March 31st. Though, again, I'll be cutting any content that was speculating on news or anything that isn't necessarily relevant anymore. Hope y'all enjoy. Okay, so Blaze is the hardest to explain with what happens in 06, as she debuted in Sonic Rush as a princess from another dimension, only to appear without explanation in Silver's future in 06. And then, in all future games, she's back to being a princess from another dimension. So what happened? Some people assume that the Blaze in 06 and the Blaze in the rest of the series are different characters, but no, she's never been treated that way, and the leaked 06 script still refers to her as coming from another dimension. At the 2012 Sega event Sonic Boom, Takashi Iizuka answered this question, stating that Blaze is from another dimension, and his explanation for 06 was that, quote, everyone had amnesia. This is contradicted by what was said by Shiro Maekawa, who was behind 06's story, who stated he specifically included Blaze to give it a greater connection to Sonic Rush, which I assume is why Silver's story ends with her getting sealed in another dimension. Unfortunately, this only ended up contradicting the stated element of Blaze's backstory that she's native to the Soul Dimension, but I can see what the thought process was. Now, according to a 2011 forum post from Ian Flynn, currently Blaze and Silver did not meet as of this timeline until the events of Sonic Colors DS. It's pretty messy, but you can kinda see the shape of what they were going for. So let's answer this one. Will Sally Acorn ever return? To which the answer remains an eternal maybe. So Sega owns the Freedom Fighters, Ian Flynn and even Ken Penders will happily tell you this. Sally was even once a mascot for a Sega theme park in Australia. Ian Flynn wants the Freedom Fighters to return.
Do I want them back? Yeah, I think it would be a nice thing to have.
And has been pushing for their inclusion since basically the beginning of IDW's run. Per Ian's own words, IDW also knows people want to see Sally. Right now, the group that is keeping Sally and the Freedom Fighters from appearing is Sega. For one reason or another, Sega, on a corporate level, does not want to use Sally. People speculate on what that reason is, but we don't have any official confirmation. Now there is something you can actually do. Ian's own statement on this is engage with social media outlets, give them tangible metrics of fan art and requests for them to point at and say, there's a demand here. Now make sure you do this respectfully. Do not be weird about it. Companies care about one thing, and it's what makes money. You have to show them that they are sleeping on a potential revenue stream, which is hard to do when there's no official merch of these characters. Sally and Bunny's most recent appearances were as background cameos in a Sonic Forces prequel comic, so it hasn't been too long since they've been acknowledged, and maybe, if we talk about them enough, they'll at least be in Sonic Dash. Thrash the Devil is one of the later antagonists in the Archie comics. Left as one of the last of his kind after echidna scientists had genetically altered his species into a new form of creature known as Mobini Devil Dogs, he swore revenge on all of the echidnas. He worked with the Down Under Freedom Fighters for a time before moving on with his own quest, where shortly after he would discover the lair of Dr. Finitivus, which would lead him to the homeland of the echidnas. Upon arriving, he would use a supercharged warp ring to trap every echidna. Knuckles would then fight in an attempt to save all of his kind, but unfortunately, even though Knuckles was evidently the better fighter, Thrash was able to escape, meaning all the echidna remained trapped. Thrash would not appear again before the comics reboot, and depending on how you look at it, you could consider this an unresolved storyline. Though it did succeed in fluidly removing most of Pender's characters from the story. Thrash would not appear post-reboot, but the similar designed Nixus the Echidna would. However, this did turn out to just be Naugus in disguise. O The Hedge is a recurring character who appears in the Archie comics pre-reboot. Clearly a parody of Robin Hood, he was once a member of the royal family of Mercia before Robotnik's takeover, with his kingdom specifically being under the control of Robotnik's sub-boss, the High Sheriff. who was a roboticized version of Antoine's father. Throughout his appearances in the comics, he would be teamed with both Knuckles and Silver, and at some point he would fall in love with and marry an echidna named Marianne, with whom he would have a child. Most interestingly, Robbo the Hedge is related to Amy, with him even having raised her for a time when her parents had been captured, before sending her away again to the Kingdom of Acorn to ensure that she would be safe. Now, their exact relation to each other is unclear, probably due to editorial inconsistencies, as sometimes he's been referred to as her cousin, and other times he's been referred to as her uncle. I have chosen not to think about this. So you know Shadow is immortal, right? This fact has been mentioned in Shadow's bio in the Sonic Heroes manual, the leaked Sonic 06 script, and even his bio on the website for Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. It had been brought up in the Archie comics, both seriously and in the context of a joke, and even on top of that, it's incorporated into his theme song, Throw It All Away, from Sonic Adventure 2, with a lyric being, "You live an endless life forever." So yeah, Shadow living till Silver's time isn't impossible. So let's talk about Shadow's future. Now, of course, while we don't know the future of the current Shadow, we've gotten a look at a couple potential futures for Shadow across all Sonic media. With a surprisingly consistent element, of course in Sonic 06, Mephiles reveals to Shadow that the human race will one day turn on him and lock him away in stasis once more. However, in the Archie comics, in the Light Mobius timeline, after becoming the tyrannical King Shadow, he is defeated and locked in stasis again, this time by Sonic and friends. Fun fact, this issue came out a month before Sonic 06, and I have no idea if Sega had communicated any of 06's plot to the team at Archie, or if this is just happenstance. He does, of course, escape later, but after unleashing to Chaos, it's not especially clear where he went. Then, in the Dark Mobius timeline, Shadow, along with pretty much every other character, had their core, or, soul, removed by Enerjack, the process of which leaves its victims in an almost sleep-like condition. So I'd say that's pretty close to stasis. We're never shown this timeline again, but it's implied things will be resolved eventually. Finally, allegedly, when asked what story he would have written for Shadow had he continued working with the franchise, Shiro Maekawa said that he may have done a story where Shadow willingly goes back into stasis, only to be awakened after a century when the world needed his help again. I say allegedly because while I've seen this get cited a lot, I can't confirm where this quote came from, even after several hours of searching. On top of that, some people have pointed out that this is apparently very similar to the Mega Man Zero games. I wouldn't know, I have blind spots when it comes to that franchise. So Maekawa may have said it, but I can't confirm it for certain.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Regardless, while our Shadow's future remains a mystery, there remains a non-zero chance of him ending up in that pod again. So is Geoffrey St. John Ken Pender's self-insert? Probably not. If Geoffrey St. John is anything, he's a pastiche of James Bond references. Penders is more than happy to admit that he's a huge James Bond fan, and him adding a character who's an accented super spy and a member of the Royal Secret Service, who also happens to be extremely proficient at close quarters combat and has at least 2 wrist-mounted gadgets, makes it pretty clear to me what the inspiration was. That also makes it more clear why Geoffrey was chosen by Penders to be the 3rd member of the Sonic-Sally love triangle, because he thinks James Bond is cool. Therefore, he believes he'd make sense as a romantic rival. And yes, he did tweet this, but being that Sean Connery is his favorite Bond, this becomes less surprising, but still very unhinged. Honestly, if anyone's a self-insert for Penders, it's Knuckles. Being that Ken has confirmed on multiple occasions that elements of Knuckles' relationship with Locke were based on his own relationship with his father. That also makes it very obvious why he's so protective over the idea of Knuckles having a father in any new stories. What he wrote probably meant a lot to him. Nicky the Hedgehog is a character who appears in the Sonic manga series published by Shogakukan that ran between the years of 1992 and 1994. Nicky isn't a different character as much as he is the alter ego of Sonic, transforming into him under stressful situations a la Shazam. While Sonic is of course overconfident and fearless, Nicky is everything he is not. Meek, aggressively polite, totally averse to conflict, and lacking most of Sonic's talents. Usually in this type of story, our protagonist will get a confidence boost by gaining their super alter ego, but unfortunately, Nicky usually doesn't remember turning into Sonic. From his perspective, he's simply blacked out and now everything is okay. When compared to Nicky, even Tails looks pretty metal. Unfortunately, this manga is not fully translated and documentation is sparse, but it is possible to find scans of about 90% of the untranslated comic. Dr. Zachary is an antagonist in the Fleetway comics. First appearing in issue 65, he takes advantage of Knuckles' trust in finding another member of his kind to attempt to steal the power of the Emeralds, which would lead the floating island to crash to the ground. However, during their battle, Zachary falls off the floating island, seemingly to his doom. However, he survived due to Robotnik's patrol finding him, and the Doctor subsequently rebuilding him, and he returns to terrorize the Freedom Fighters in issue 97, with the two of them plotting to use the people of Emerald Hill as components of a biological supercomputer, only for an EMP caused by Supersonic to shut it down and leave them a chance to fight back. Knuckles battles Zachary once more, causing him to fall into a chasm. According to writer Nigel Kitching, had the comic continued, he would have returned once more, releasing a gang of echidna criminals who had been placed in stasis upon Mobius. So in one of the pilots of Sonic X, this character showed up. The name Nazo came from the fact the initial image of this design had appeared on Sega Japan's website as nazo.jpg. The word Nazo in Japanese just meaning mystery. Like other elements from the Sonic X pilots, this design never actually appeared in the show proper, leading some to assume this was cut content. It would inspire plenty of fan work, such as Chakra X's Nazo Unleashed, which if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out, it's still sick. However, around 2015, a fan got in touch with Takashi Iizuka and asked him directly about Nazo, to which he responded that this was just an early supersonic design for Sonic X. The fan asking him about it even pressed him on it, only for him to reassert, "I told you, this is not a mysterious character, just supersonic." Episode 26 of Sonic X also features a very visually similar shot, so it's pretty evident this was meant to be supersonic. Now why this design never appeared in the final show? Iizuka's not even sure of that, but it was probably for the best. Captain Shellbreaker is the last new antagonist to appear in the Archie comics. Making his debut in the Sonic Universe arc Case of the Pirate Princess, he and his crew kidnapped the Princess of Meropis, Udina, though it appears she went more willingly, and seems to be enjoying it, essentially using the pirates to travel the world as well as being able to keep them from acting too terribly. The members of Shellbreaker's crew include Opal the Jellyfish, Dive the Lemming, Mr. Bristles the Yeti Crab, and Blade the Shark. Blade's brother Razor was once a member of the crew before having a change of heart about the nature of being a pirate and being abandoned at sea. By the end of the story, Captain Shellbreaker and his crew are outsmarted by Udina and the Chaotix, who abandoned them on an island, though they swear they will get their revenge. Of course, this was the last issue to be published by Archie, so they don't. I mean, I suppose this is my own fault. Let's talk about Sonic in the Ready Player One franchise. Despite not appearing at all in the first book, Sonic makes two astonishingly small cameos in the Ready Player One movie. Literally blink and you'll miss him. However, there are direct references to him in the sequel novel Ready Player 2. The character Kiramaro created an Oasis world based off of the Sonic franchise, but with kind of a focus on Archie in specific, with the world being called Mobius Prime, saying that it's a future version of Earth, and mentioning there being characters from the cartoons and comics. Meaning the film adaptation of this book is our current best chance at seeing Sally again. I don't know how I feel about that. Later, after the cast gets trapped in the virtual world by Anorak, the character Shoto states, "Anorak just went Sonic EXE on us." I guess. Beyond that, there's a section homaging the late Rieko Kodama, specifically mentioning her contributions to both the Phantasy Star series and the first Sonic game. And shortly after, the characters end up briefly in Green Hill Zone. You know, I feel like I know less about Ready Player One after this. The Xorda are a race of aliens that appear in the Archie comics. Thousands of years before the plot properly began, the Xordas sent an ambassador to Earth, with hopes of brokering a peaceful alliance, only for them to be captured and dissected. In an act of revenge, the Xorda bombarded the planet with gene bombs, expecting all life to have been wiped out, only for them to return thousands of years later to find the planet, now called Mobius, still inhabited. Unswayed by reason, they activate a weapon known as the Quantum Dial, which was capable of opening a black hole, ensuring Mobius's destruction. Assuming the planet's fate was certain, they escaped to a safe distance, left completely unaware of Sonic's sacrifice to stop the device. While the Xorda would be glimpsed again, they would not make another attempt to destroy Mobius, as they had become locked in combat with the Black Arms, which kept both of them from invading the planet. Hamlin is a character who appears in the Archie comics, and I just hate him so much. First appearing in the Princess Sally miniseries, he's the exact type of character who always finds something to complain about. I wouldn't even mind the fact that he's constantly in danger if he was even somewhat appreciative after being rescued. But no, he continues being terrible. Somehow, this waste of space gets elected to the Council of Acorns, that's politics for you, where his first major action on the council is to attempt to try Sally for treason because she organized the freedom fighters to stand against Scourge without the council's approval. It's also revealed at the end of this issue that the entire reason Hamlin tried to do this is that he was jealous he wasn't a member of the core freedom fighters. I hate him so much. Hey, so where's Amy's parents? In the Archie comics, we get to see a good portion of the main cast's parents, but while Amy's gets mentioned, we never see them. Some fan sources claimed that they were roboticized, but the only official word of the Archie series is that they are currently missing. And if they were roboticized, they would have probably showed up when everyone was mass DeRoboticized. So where are they? So Amy's family was actually a noble family of the Kingdom of Mercia, with Amy's parents having used all of their own wealth to help the disadvantaged people of the kingdom. Now we actually get to see the Kingdom of Mercia a few times throughout the comic, which was in the control of the High Sheriff. But he wouldn't roboticize those he captured. He did something else. Things aren't looking great for Amy's parents. Okay, so in issue 123, all the roboticized Mobians had mysteriously become deroboticized, except for Sonic's dad. I've already done a video on that. In addition, this also made the restored Mobians immune to being roboticized again. This was done by Seneca 9009, a rogue member of an alien race known as the BEM, which, based on a previous interaction with Sonic and Eggman, had decided that robotic life was superior and was going to roboticize the planet. Seneca had made the decision to go against her species in order to preserve the life on the planet, deroboticizing everyone. The immunity would not last forever, as Eggman was able to make everyone susceptible to roboticization again through his Operation Clean Sweep, and was now threatening the planet with his World Roboticizer. Thankfully, his plan would be stopped and immunity would be partially restored by Sally, though it would be at the cost of her being roboticized. Roboticization is the process Robotnik uses to turn his enemies into robots, doing so with a device called the Roboticizer. First developed by Sonic's Uncle Chuck with the intention of using it to help the sick and elderly, the device transmutes all organic material into mechanical parts, right down to the skeleton, and has the unfortunate side effect of destroying the individual's free will. It works very similar to IDW's metal virus with seemingly no organic parts left behind. Parts of a roboticized individual can be swapped out, but that seemingly means that the process of being roboticized becomes permanent. That being said, this was contradicted when Bunny was deroboticized by Naugus, though that was technically through magic, so the rules kind of stopped mattering. Fleetway features its own form of roboticization, wherein the victim is primarily used as an organic battery for the badnik, though this process, in some cases, is simpler to reverse. Nicole is Sally's computer assistant who first appeared in SatAM and would quickly make a transition to the comics. Pre-reboot, she was built by Rotor in a possible future, then sent back in time to the present day. After an accident caused her and Sally to temporarily body swap, she began to yearn to live, which resulted in the creation of her HoloLinks form. Post-reboot, her origins are simplified quite a bit, now the unintended creation of Dr. Ality, who was attempting to digitize the consciousness of his daughter Nicky, who was suffering from a fatal illness. Unfortunately, he failed to succeed in doing so, and gave Nicole's handheld form to Sally, with the two growing incredibly close over time, and Nicole first manifesting her holographic form when desiring to see the stars the same way Sally does. Both pre- and post-reboot, she becomes a prominent member of the Freedom Fighters with a sizable amount of appearances. Uncle Chuck is Sonic's uncle, first appearing in Archie Sonic Zero, predating his SatAM appearance by roughly a year. A skilled inventor, across several continuities he's been credited for the creation of the Roboticizer, Sonic's Shoes, and strictly in SatAM, the Power Rings. He would not only be one of the more prominent victims of roboticization in the series, but be one of the first to regain his free will, even acting as a double agent against Robotnik. After being deroboticized, he would use his proficiency with technology to continue helping the Freedom Fighters, even assisting in the creation of Shard the Metal Sonic. Chuck is definitely one of the more persistent characters from this era, appearing both pre- and post-reboot in Archie, featuring prominently in SatAM, and appearing in Sonic Underground. Though post-reboot Archie keeps his direct relation to Sonic more vague, referring to him as an uncle to many.
Give me your thoughts on this. Who would make better music, Sonic or Knuckles?
I can and will find an actual answer for this. So Sonic's been depicted as fairly musical since his inception, initially appearing as the lead vocalist in both Sonic 1 concept art as well as the Sonic story manga, with guitar being added to his repertoire shortly after. Not to mention a whole spin-off show that was musically focused, let's not worry about that right now. A commercial for Sonic Adventure as well as official art also depicted him as being able to DJ, and Sonic Symphony artwork cast him in the role of the conductor. Side note, since I brought up the manga, Nicky sucks at violin. Knuckles' musical ability is a little less obvious, and despite appearing in Sonic Underground, he never actually plays an instrument. However, that doesn't mean we have nothing. Both Sonic Symphony artwork and Sonic Channel artwork depict Knuckles as playing the drums, which is also glimpsed in the Sonic Live slot machine. Sonic's got a guitar here too. Another key portion of this is whether or not we're going to consider Knuckles' themes from Sonic Adventure 2 as reflective of his actual musical ability. Hunted P performs the 6 tracks from the perspective of Knuckles, and I think that's mainly up to you if you consider that part of Knuckles' own musical ability. So Sonic is definitely more musically inclined, but is also depicted as having a band to support him, and if Knuckles plays the drums, then he plays a key part in that. And I do think that reflects their in-universe dynamics very well. If you are to consider Hunted P's music diegetic, then yeah, Knuckles can produce music on his own. Overlocked Nicole is a super form that appears in the Archie comics, making its first appearance in the Spark of Life arc. Rather than using emeralds like a typical super form, she taps into this form utilizing a red star ring when it has been plugged into her console. This form greatly enhances her control over technology, though at the same time, unlike most super forms, it doesn't make her invulnerable, and prolonged use of it has been shown to be dangerous. Sally Moon is a character who only appears in Sonic Super Special number 8, when her arch-nemesis Queen Robotina crosses dimensions to terrorize the Sonic of Mobius Prime. Sally Moon, along with her sidekick Chibi Rose, are called upon by the Zone Cops to take care of the issue. While at first Ivana appears to be too much for them, Tuxedo Nux intervenes and puts a stop to her evil doing. Why wouldn't they just call him Nuxido Mask? Obviously these characters are all parodies of Sailor Moon, but the most interesting thing is who wrote this story. Dan Slott, as in Spider-Man Dan Slott. He says we can use his characters, though. So for an extended period of time in the Archie comics, its Eggman is completely robotic, his consciousness stored in a backup body, which he further modifies to allow him to roboticize people by merely touching them. This also allows him to survive events that would otherwise be fatal, as when his previous body was destroyed, this allows him to simply swap his consciousness to a new body. Now this does end up contradicting what had previously been stated, that individuals who had been modified after being roboticized could not have the process reversed, as he was returned to an organic form by the BEM. Now I have 2 theories as to why this was able to happen. The first is that due to him being completely robotic rather than partially robotic like other characters, the BEM were able to properly convert his parts to organic parts, as they didn't need to compensate for any existing components. The second theory is that the writers forgot the specifics of what they had set up, and just hoped no one asked why Bunny was still partially roboticized. Honestly, I wouldn't even consider that a failure, that's just the thing that happens when comics run for more than 100 issues. During the Iron Dominion arc, Nicole was taken control of by the Techno-Mage, the Iron Queen, resulting in her turning against her friends through no choice of her own, with her brainwashed form being dubbed Iron Nicole. And since she essentially acted as New Mobotropolis' security system, this allowed the Iron Queen to take full control of the city. Thankfully, the Iron Queen's hold over Nicole didn't last long, as Sonic and Sally entered the digital world themselves to restore her free will, with Nicole deciding to pretend to be brainwashed a little longer in order to give the Freedom Fighters an upper hand in the battle, as well as giving herself a chance to improve her programming to prevent the Iron Queen from taking control of her again. However, despite playing a pivotal role in defeating the Iron Queen, her brief time being mind-controlled caused the culture at large in New Mobotropolis to turn against her, especially after Mina's nightmares of the events caused her to write a song that was specifically anti-Nicole, worsening public opinion of her even further. The Iron Queen, real name Regina Ferrum, is an antagonist in the Archie comics. Having trained at a young age as a techno-mage, she has the ability to magically exert control over many forms of technology. However, as her form of magic was illegal, she was exiled, which led her to ally with Jun-kun, the Iron King. She first met Sonic in issue 60, taking control of the cyborg Monkey Khan to terrorize Mobius, before a long absence from the comics, taking control of the Eggman Empire after Eggman had a lapse in sanity. She also ended up falling in love with Eggman's nephew Snively, their relationship appearing to be 100% genuine, though Eggman believed her to not be trusted. Monkey Khan, real name Ken, is a character who appears in the Archie comics. Having been turned into a cyborg by Robotnik, but still maintaining his free will, the Doctor sealed him away for 10 years until Sally freed him after Robotnik's defeat. As I'm sure you can tell by his similarities to another character,
Hey, it's me, Goku!
he's based off of Sun Wukong from Journey to the West, complete with Flying Cloud and his weapon of choice being a staff. After being freed, he both begins his own campaign against Robotnik and becomes somewhat of a rival to Sonic, in a few different senses of that term. Eggman never had the firmest grasp on sanity, but this is when Eggman went mad. Following a defeat in New Mobotropolis, Robotnik's grasp on sanity began to loosen. This was first noticed by Snively, but even he didn't realize how serious it was until Eggman called him by his birth name. He would finally be pushed over the edge in a subsequent battle with Sonic after being taunted with his repeated failings, leading to him having a complete breakdown. And while most everyone is celebrating the fall of Eggman, Sonic's left pretty disturbed by it. While Snively tells the Freedom Fighters that he's going to take care of his uncle, he really locks him in a padded room so that he can hand over the Eggman Empire to the Iron Queen. While left in an incoherent state, he does manage to escape his holding cell and attempt to fight Sonic, with a little bit of success, though they end up locking him in a prison in New Mobotropolis in about the most compassionate form Sonic can muster. However, a chance interaction with Uncle Chuck causes him to regain his lucidity. While Snively initially refuses to free him when it becomes clear that the Freedom Fighters were going to defeat the Iron Queen, Snively, out of desperation, frees his uncle. In the Sonic Universe arc Scrambled, Snively once again attempts to betray his uncle. After failing to recruit his half-sister Hope, he goes to rescue his former love Regina, the Iron Queen. Incredibly upset that he had left her when things got bad and not willing to trust him again, she states that she'd rather rot in prison than be with him again, only for Snively to return moments later with the Iron Oni mech, intent on proving his love to Regina by facing his uncle head-on. Snively's plan seems promising, but once Eggman enters his own mech and is able to get close enough to tamper with the Iron Oni, Eggman is able to defeat them. Regina wakes up sometime later, only to find that Eggman has decided to not only let her and Snively go, but put the two in charge of an area of his empire. However, Eggman's true intent is then revealed, as the Snively he left with Regina was a mechanical duplicate, while the real Snively was left to rot inside a capsule. And aside from a brief cameo in the first Mega Man crossover, this is the last we see of pre-reboot Snively. Segata Sanshiro was a Sega mascot specifically in ads about the Sega Saturn. The general format of the ads would be that Segata would demonstrate his fighting prowess, often leaving everyone in the room in critical condition, before telling you to play the Sega Saturn. This earned him a brief cameo in Archie 269, where he faces off with Sonic amidst the comics tournament arc. We only catch the tail end of the fight with Sonic TKOing him, but Sonic does complement his fighting abilities. Beyond that, Segata also makes a brief cameo in Sonic All-Star Racing Transformed. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to help me keep making content, you can support me over at patreon.com/hsquid, or just hit like, comment, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. I want to give a shout out to my patrons who are on screen, and a special shout out to my $5 patron, Nedrex. See y'all in the next video.